The A7 IV, a hotly anticipated camera that all we actually know about it is it's going to be announced sometime between now and the apocalypse. Seriously, no idea. Could be next week, could be next month, hell, could even be next year, the way the chip shortage is currently going. However, I worry that for a lot of people, the A7 IV is going to be a disappointment. I don't think it's going to be a bad camera, far from it. The A7 III was a fantastic camera. The A7 IV is only going to improve on that, so by that logic, the A7 IV is still going to be a fantastic camera. However, whether somebody finds something disappointing or appointing depends on whether it meets what their expectations are. And this is where I feel some people might fall a bit foul with this camera. I think exceeding expectations is what made the A7 III such a big selling camera. I mean, seriously, it's got to be one of Sony's biggest selling mirrorless cameras, if not the biggest selling full frame mirrorless camera to date. And the reason for that, I think, is because it exceeded everyone's expectations. And going from the original A7 to the A7 II, there were improvements, but the jump from the 2 to the 3 was just a whole nother level that nobody expected. You had a completely overhauled autofocus system that had almost flagship levels of performance, almost double the shooting speed, improved video specs, improved battery, dual card slots, the whole works. It really was, at the time, for a lot of people, the perfect camera. Certainly was for me. I mean, at the time the A7 III was released, I had the 5D3 and the 7D2. And the 5D3 was great for high ISO and good image quality. The 7D2 was great from the autofocus and the speed aspect. Neither of them, though, were particularly good when it comes to video or dynamic range. The A7 III basically put both of those together and chucked a load of improvements on top of it. And everyone was caught out by that announcement. Not just consumers, but also other manufacturers. Everyone had to step up their game from that point. But I worry some people might be expecting the same again from the A7 IV, and I don't think it's going to be the case. It will certainly carry improvements, but I'm not convinced it will carry the improvements that a lot of people are hoping for. By the sounds of it, it will have a higher resolution sensor, around about 33 megapixels, which is something I predicted long ago. So do I think the A7 IV will have a higher resolution sensor than the 3? Yes, I do. Because with the A7R4 taking the resolution up to 61 megapixels, there's definitely a huge gap for the A7 IV to see a resolution increase to put it somewhere back in the middle between the R and the S. However, I don't see the autofocus seeing that much of an improvement because there's not really much headroom for it to improve. The autofocus system in the A7 III was basically a revised version of the A9's AF system, and that's not changed to the A9 II. The A1 basically has the same sort of autofocus performance, and it's unlikely the A7 IV is going to have a whole new AF system that's even better than their flagship cameras. So really, I think it's going to be the same sort of autofocus performance that we've got from the A7 III now. I don't even think the shooting speed's going to see an improvement. It seems like Sony are pretty set for now at 10 frames a second for the A7 lineup. The A7R4 still shooting 10 frames a second versus the R3. Granted, it's seen a huge bump in resolution, so that's forgivable. But the A7S3, still 10 frames a second, the same as everything else. Even though at such a low resolution, that in theory could shoot much faster, especially with an electronic shutter, but they've not bothered. And I'm not convinced that we would see anything higher than 10 frames a second from the A7 IV. Which is a little bit of a disappointment because the rumours seem to suggest the A7 IV is going to get the dual UHS-2/CF Express Type A memory card slots that the A7S III's got, which should allow for really fast buffer clearing that would be ideally suited to faster burst rates, but I'm not convinced that we're going to get it. I think most of the improvements that we're going to see from that camera are going to be around the ergonomics and the overall build of the camera. If it's not exactly the same body as the S3, it's definitely going to be something like it. It's going to be somewhere around the S3, the R4, slightly enlarged over the A7 III, slightly bigger and more comfortable grip. It's going to have the improved buttons, probably going to have the improved menu systems as well. Might have a fully articulating screen, perhaps. Hopefully an improved EVF as well. I don't think we're going to see a huge jump in EVFs, but that is certainly one of the weak points of the A7 III, which is understandable. You can't put everything into a camera without raising the price up, so you have to save money somewhere. And in the A7 III, they went with a cheap EVF and a cheap LCD and a cheap shutter unit. And I hope all three of those are going to see an improvement on the A7 IV. Even the video specs, I'm not convinced they're going to see huge jumps forward. Potentially, you could see 6K, but I doubt it. I think it's going to be still downsampled to 4K. The talk is that it could be 4K 60, which would be an improvement over what we've currently got. The biggest question is going to be, is it going to be 8-bit? Is it going to be 10-bit? Is it still going to be 420? Is it going to be 422? The S3's seen 10-bit and 422, but that's obviously more expensive and highly video focused. Part of me thinks that we're not going to see that from the A7 IV. Maybe 4K 60, 8-bit 420, and then 4K 30, 10-bit 422, or one or the other. The A7 III was a revelation. It was like going from the 5D Classic to the 5D2. But I think the A7 IV is going to be more of an evolution, like the 5D3 to the 5D4. It's going to take a solid basis that's already been established with the A7 III, and it's just going to refine the weak points and give it subtle improvements. But I don't think it's going to be a huge leap forward. I think there's a lot of people who bought the A7 III when it was first released and are now waiting for this revelation of an A7 IV to come out so they can sell the 3 and buy the 4 and have another huge jump in performance. And I don't think it's going to be the case. I think there will be a lot of people who see the A7 IV come out and think, I wish it could be better. And the stupid thing is, you can't expect everything for nothing. I'm pretty sure Sony released the A7 III as a loss leader. I'm convinced that they weren't making profit, or a small amount of profit at best, with that camera, and it was more a way of attracting people onto the system. It certainly worked that way for sure. But given the performance that it offered for the price point compared to the competition, that was either they were saving a hell of a lot of money in cutting corners somewhere, which the A7 IV would then improve, or they were losing money on it, which is something they can't repeat with the A7 IV again. So either way, the A7 IV is going to improve on the 3. Don't think it's going to be huge leaps and bounds ahead. And I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed by it, even though it's still going to be a great camera. But what do you think? Are you excited by the A7 IV, or do you think it'll be disappointing? Are you going to get one or not? Leave your thoughts and comments down below while you're down there. If you haven't already, please consider supporting this channel by hitting the like and subscribe button, and then hopefully we'll see you in the next video.